its mistakes and begin a radical change, starting from the popes and the bishops. The pedophilia scandals oblige us to take a journey of transformation, he said in that interview. Martini, famous for comments that the use of birth control could be acceptable in certain cases, told interviewers the church should open up to new kinds of families or risk losing its flock altogether. He spoke out about the need for the church to accept second marriages after divorce, saying that just as a second love can succeed, it should also be recognized by the church. This is in response to the Vatican that opposes divorce and forbids contraception in favor of fidelity within marriage and abstinence outside of it. Martini retired in 2002 after being diagnosed with a rare form of Parkinson's disease. As you know, Pope John Paul II was instead succeeded in 2005 by Pope Benedict XVI, a hero of Catholic conservatives who was known by his critics as God's Rottweiler because of his stern stand on theological issues. Martini's final message to Pope Benedict was to begin a shakeup of the church without delay. The church is 200 years out of date. Why don't we rouse ourselves? Now, if you think that I'm going to stand here and use this forum to abuse the Catholic Church or to somehow tout the superiority of Protestantism, I'm afraid you're going to be woefully disappointed. Instead, I believe, as I always have, that the Catholic Church is sort of a litmus test for the other Protestant churches globally. When the Vatican is suffering, we all, I believe, suffer in some way. And when there's talk about the church being behind the times, I believe it speaks to a lot more than just Catholics. We as a church function in an era far different than we've seen throughout history. We are viewed by the global society, but especially in our Western culture, as irrelevant and scandalous and judgmental. No longer is the church part of our identity like in past years, where personal weekly events were scheduled around worship and seasonal observance of Advent and Lent. Now church is something we do when we don't have anything else to do. And if church is irrelevant, fraught with suspicion, and it's someplace that hurts people, why would we choose to be there? Over the last decade, as many parts of the church have begun to reemerge as something more culturally relevant, we're seeing that the much larger mainstream churches, like that of our Catholic friends, are just beginning to follow suit. They're starting to realize that the church has lost its luster, and without being attentive to surrounding culture, will most certainly end in its death. So this is good news, I think, for the church. And good news especially for Catholics, who have the opportunity to shape the future with the choice of their new pope. But in this incredible lag between the great church time capsule and the prevailing cultural changes, our peeps have gone somewhere else. The people that were once integral parts of the church are now finding other things to do. Things that matter. Again, carving out time in a hectic week for a special service or scheduling a busy weekend around worship just isn't what we do corporately these days. It seems to be far better to get the house spruced up or volunteer at the local shelter, or catch a Sunday football game, rather than try to find God in the hallowed halls of the church. And our society isn't helping very much. We talk about it a lot these days, but we can't get around the fact that everything in our culture tells each of us that we are the center of the universe. It's individualism at its very best, or worse, depending on your perspective. In adolescent psychology, we recognize this kind of mindset as an appropriate stage of human development. But as we mature, we're supposed to see ourselves as part of the corporate society. And it becomes far less about me than it does about us. But somewhere along the line, we have been told that we don't have to grow up. And it is all about me. What I have, what I don't have, how I can be more important, how my rights are more important than the rights of others, or how I have more money, or how I look better, and on and on and on and on and on. The sad part about this kind of thinking is that it's totally antithetical to the teachings of Jesus and of the church. I recently had a colleague that had a parishioner who decided to leave his church for another. It's always sad to get this news as a pastor, but it happens. When he then tried to get a closer picture of why this person would choose to go to another church, and was told that his church didn't exactly meet the man's spiritual needs, yet the man didn't really know what those spiritual needs were exactly. Unfortunately, many people in the church had become fond of this person, and relationships had grown deep. But again, the parishioner was not seeing the whole picture, but rather a very narrow, individualistic view of trying to get his own needs met. Friendships and kindnesses shown to him over the years seemed to mean very little, and he was unable to see God in the face of all those kind, loving people around him in the church. This, I believe, is a perfect example of where the impulse to satisfy ourselves, our needs, our wants, color our perception of reality and close us to the opportunities that we have to learn more about each other and about God. So what is the cause of the decline in communities of faith? The church having its head in the sand? Or our culture blinding us to the fact that there is more out there than simply me? It's a perplexing question and very much akin to that of the chicken or the egg, which came first. Our well-known scripture for today points to a way of doing things that is different from what has been. It's inappropriate to the cultural norms. It's not fair to the older faithful brother. It doesn't hold the younger brother accountable for his bad choices and behavior. But instead, it says that the kingdom of God has different rules than churches and cultures. It says that digging one's heels into the sand of church dogma and politics is simply going to get your feet dirty. And it says that relationships always win out. My friends, it is time for the pendulum to swing. It is time to realize that the church, as usual, is not going to serve anyone, but instead die. The world around us is changing so completely that it calls on the church to constantly be reinventing itself to meet people where they are. That's what we're doing here at this church with our visioning committee that's been meeting over the past many months. We're figuring out how to take our strengths and move forward to new heights to make God's mission real for this particular congregation. However, in the same conversation, we can't negate the fact that we in our individualistic society care far less about the church than where we're going to go to eat tonight, or what we need to buy to look nice in the living room, or our upcoming trip to the Caribbean. Where there was a time that the church was part of our everyday lives, now our everyday lives continue, and we fit the church in any empty spots when we come across them. But the relationship part, The part that shows us who God is lost when we choose not to be with one another. Both Tommy the German Shepherd and the Duck Dynasty Robertson family understand the importance of that relational piece, even if it doesn't sell by media standards. So now, I believe we have the opportunity to shift that pendulum. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm sure anxious